Hello and welcome to Perspectives, where we take a deep dive into the issues of the day and where we take a look at people's opinion on such issues. I am Ruth Osime.
And I am Olatorera Oniru. Here today for another health-focused episode. Our discussion is on the neurodevelopmental disorder called autism. In-depth perspectives, facts, and true stories coming up, so please stay tuned.
Welcome back to Perspectives here on Arise News. Autism Speaks celebrates World Autism Month every April. Autism, now called Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD, is a neurodevelopmental disease typically diagnosed during childhood. ASD includes several conditions within the spectrum. There's no cure for autism, but for some, the symptoms may lessen over time. People with ASD often have problems with social communication and interaction and restricted or repetitive behaviors or interests. They may also have different ways of learning, moving, or paying attention. But a person with ASD can live independently as an adult. Some have gone on to excel globally in their various endeavors, like Elon Musk, the entrepreneur, and Albert Einstein, the eminent scientist and physicist, not to mention Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft Corporation, or Michelangelo, the famous sculptor and painter, just to mention a few. In fact, British-Nigerian Joshua Bedford, an autistic child, graduated from the prestigious Oxford University at the mere age of 14. He has been named one of the most intelligent children in the world. Joshua excels in science, mathematics, history, and foreign languages. However, not all individuals can achieve the same level of independence, as some parents raising a child with autism face extreme difficulties in dealing with challenging behaviors and preparing their children for adult life. Parents of autistic children, in my mind, are superheroes. They are the support system and enablers of gifted individuals with unique abilities. Each day is new and brings forth challenges and opportunities for the family.
Very well said. Parents of autistic children are superheroes. For several centuries past, certain children were labeled retarded, moronic, idiotic, obnoxious, or psychotic. But a century ago, the medical word autism arose, which increased medical and humanitarian awareness for the health disorder. There are several claims of misdiagnosis and overdiagnosis of levels of autism, but the most widespread debate has been whether or not certain immunizations or vaccinations cause or ignite autism. Despite huge pushbacks from large pharmaceutical organizations, over 1,300 cases of brain injuries resulting from immunizations have been compensated over the past 20 years. In 2010, a United States Claims Court awarded $20 million after acknowledging that vaccines were responsible for the development of autism in Hannah, a victim who regressed developmentally after receiving 9 vaccines on the same day at only 18 months old. Another noteworthy example is Michelle, who was a happy, engaged, and normal toddler until she received a measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine at 15 months old. Within days of receiving the MMR vaccine, Michelle suffered from a very high fever and persistent problems with vomiting and digestion. She stopped speaking and could no longer respond to her name. Subsequently, Michelle was unable to walk without assistance or feed without a tube feeding her. Her pediatric neurologist acknowledged that the MMR vaccine was a substantial factor in causing Michelle's autism. These 2 cases, amongst tens of thousands of other cases, create causal awareness for autism. On the flip side, pharmaceutical research indicates that autism after vaccination is mere coincidence. What more do we know, and what more can be done to save and support children from autism? Co-host and I will have our usual discussion shortly, but for right now, let's watch this special report. Perspectives. We'll be right back.
The case of autism spectrum disorder is one that needs a lot of awareness globally. to enlighten the people on ways to attend to people living with ASD. The abilities of people living with ASD can vary significantly. For example, some people with ASD may have advanced conversation skills, whereas others may be nonverbal. Some people with ASD need a lot of help in their daily lives. Others can work and live with little or no support. ASD begins before the age of 3 years and can last throughout a person's life, although symptoms may improve over time. Some children show ASD symptoms within the first 12 months of life. In others, symptoms may not show up until 24 months of age or later. Diagnosing ASD can be difficult since there is no medical test, like a blood test, to diagnose disorder. Doctors look at the child's behavior and developments to make a diagnosis. Social communication and interaction skills can be challenging for people with ASD. Examples of social communication and interaction characteristics related to ASD can include: the baby or the child avoids or does not keep eye contact, does not respond to name by 9 months of age, does not show facial expression like happy, sad, angry, and surprised by 9 months of age, does not play simple interactive games by 12 months of age, amongst other symptoms that they show when they are growing up. There is not just one cause of ASD. There are many different factors that have been identified that may make a child more likely to have ASD, including environmental, biological, and genetic factors. April is set aside to create awareness around autism spectrum disorder. And if we intend to create an environment that people living with ASD can thrive without being stigmatized, we need to enlighten the public on ways to deal with these special set of people.
What I find most fascinating about autism is that, when you see children who are physically challenged or mentally challenged, there's a way they actually look. Just like, when you see people with autism, you almost don't know anything is wrong until maybe their behavioral pattern or they utter something. And I find most amazing is also the fact that people like Elon Musk, people like Michelangelo, people like that Joshua Beckford I mentioned, can be in this spectrum and yet excel so much in other areas beyond human whatever.
I think that's why it's been called a spectrum, because there's so many.
I know,
levels
but I'm
of
just
it.
saying that in other ailments, there's no particular area where they actually are more gifted, so to speak, than the average person. But with autism, there's a particular section where they actually are blessed with more gifts, more exceptional gifts than the average person has.
I find that very interesting.
It's very interesting.
What proves that they have more exceptional gifts?
For instance, like
genius capabilities.
Yeah, they're genius capabilities. Okay. Like the Joshua Beckford guy I just mentioned. He's 14 and he's already graduated from Oxford University. That obviously is no mere feat. And then they also have very high IQs. So it's one.
So what made him a candidate for autism?
Yeah, because he has one of the spectrums, obviously.
Yeah, what were the symptoms?
I don't know what the symptoms are, which is what we're going to ask our guests. But bottom line is that he falls into that category where he's excessively gifted than the normal person would have. Which is why you have Elon Musk, you have the Microsoft guy.
But that makes me wonder, should he really be considered autistic if he's gifted?
Well, it's not normal for a 14-year-old to graduate from a university. You have to
So it shouldn't be autism, it should be a genius level sort of...
Well, that's what they put in the spectrum. We cannot argue with the medical bodies that give you that title. It's called a spectrum for a reason. Now, what I also...
But it's a disorder. Autism spectrum disorder. But if it's actually progressing him, if he's doing well, then
what I find fascinating is that even though it's a disorder, it is almost like a gift.
That's what I'm saying.
And there are other ailments or other challenges that other people have that you don't have a particular section that is exceedingly gifted with extremely high IQ. So I find that quite fascinating.
Right.
In
I
itself.
think you wore blue today because of autism.
Actually, that's true. Yes, I did. Actually,
yes.
I did.
Very
I did.
lovely dress.
I did. Thank you. I wore blue today. I said, okay, well, at least let me pay homage to what this course is all about. And I think a lot of awareness needs to be created because people with autism or any other form of challenges should be given special attention and special needs. We need to really focus on it because there are lots of them that have other talents that are hidden and they are judged just because of the way they look or the way they act, and it shouldn't be so.
Right.
You know, it
but there are some of them really
so.
going through it. It's it's tough on the moms, it's tough on the child, especially the ones that were diagnosed after taking the vaccination.
Now that vaccination thing too is another controversial one because I'm sure the powers that be in the manufacturing industry and what have you know how it's like
the pharmaceuticals,
they would rather die than admit that. But I find it extremely fascinating that there's a link between vaccination and autism.
Absolutely. The first time I heard about it was a friend who, one of her children was autistic, the other one was very normal. And I asked her what she thought caused it. And she said she believed it was the MMR vaccine that her son took. Because right after he took it, she just saw his health deteriorate. And so she refused to vaccinate her subsequent children. And they came out normal.
That's a very controversial... Because if you look at the percentage, if you look at the ratio, how many percent of children have been affected by this?
It's about 1%. But then if you look at every drug, there's always side effects.
Exactly.
There are always people that are affected negatively, and it's usually a small percent.
Yep.
So they'll tell you that, it works 99% of the time, or it works 98% of the time, but is that 1 or 2% that it affects?
Yeah, but my question now will now be...
to make sure that this 1% are saved.
My question will now be, is it enough for other mothers to now say they must not vaccinate their children because of this?
Yeah. Well, more study needs to be brought up. So we need to know the mothers that are liable to having children that would catch autism, rather than just saying, okay, vaccination is for everybody.
There's a word, anything like catch autism. I think you're either born like that
to ignite it.
Or maybe ignite. Maybe ignite.
To ignite, to start it, to just, we want healthy children.
The two mothers are here to at least give us a broader picture.
I can't wait to have them on board, absolutely.
Anyway, we're heading for a short break. But stay with us because we are coming right back to start the conversation with our guests. Chinwe, Iguh and Kemi Sunmonu-Jackson. Perspectives will return in just a moment. Welcome back to Perspectives here on Arise News.
Now on to introducing our guests for today. First off is Chinwe Iguh, a self-employed business director who runs a lifestyle store. Chinwe is a vendor to corporate entities, and she has many high net worth clients and individuals in her portfolio. A translator by training, Chinwe went to school in Switzerland, France, and Germany. She speaks French fluently and has a working knowledge of German. Chinwe has long been an avid crusader for creating awareness about autism and its different spectrums. Chinwe believes that with more awareness, those challenged by autism will be better equipped to adjust to living their daily lives. Welcome to Perspectives, Chinwe.
Hello. Hi. Hi, Ruth.
After Kemi Sunmonu-Jackson graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics from Rutgers University, New Jersey, she took her studies further in a special education graduate program at Georgian Court University, where she earned her advanced certificates in special education, all grades, as well as mathematics and science. Kemi went on to start what would be her decade-long career in special education in New Jersey, United States. In addition to her education and work experience with special needs children, Kemi is also a parent to 3 children, 2 of which have various special needs. During her time as special educator, Kemi Sunmonu-Jackson was responsible for modifying academic instruction and tasks based on each of her students' disabilities, as well as writing and implementing individualized educational plans for students with disabilities, ranging from elementary to high school. She later went on to be the owner and director of an academic enrichment learning center in Pennsylvania. She is also the founder of Isabel's Voice, and a GLO 7 individuals with special needs and learning disabilities in Nigeria. Her educational background and personal journey as a mother to 2 children with special needs is the driving force behind Isabel's Voice, which is aptly named after her non-verbal daughter. Many thanks to both of you for being here.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
As we all know, being the mother of a challenged child must be one of the most challenging experiences for mothers. And I totally understand why you're passionate about finding a way for children to better live their lives as autistic children.
Right.
Okay, let's start with you, Chinwe. You have a son who's autistic, but I've heard of high functioning and low functioning, Asperger's, and what's the other one? Servants in grades in autism. So can you elaborate more on that?
Okay, so autism is a wide spectrum. So there are a lot of diagnoses that come under the spectrum. It's called autistic spectrum disorder, like you said. So there's the low functioning up to the high functioning autism. Asperger's, as you said, comes under high functioning Asperger's. So you see, like
those where you have the Elon Musk and
and you have the geniuses, like a child who is like 5 years old and he's like doing maths for like a university professor. You know, when it comes to like multiplication, complex multiplication and mathematical things, he just looks at it and his brain just automatically knows the answer. So those are like very high functioning kids. But when it comes to like those high functioning autistic kids, you know, they're also like socially not,
inept,
inept, you know, so they're just like, people
them
call
like
them like weirdos or odd, yes, you know, so, but they are
they don't know how to express.
They don't know how to socialize, they have like social, they have like deficiencies in their social communication skills. So then you have again the moderate, then the low functioning ones, the low functioning autistic kids. You know, they're non-verbal, you know, they have like all they have the stimming, you know, they just can't function, they can't learn, you know, so it's really a wide spectrum. Then you have the moderate autism, you know, they understand they need their education differentiated for them. They need to be taught in a different way. So you need to break it down. So it's
Very
one
wide
hour
spectrum.
is a wide spectrum, and really 1 hour is not enough to like break it down.
Well, Kemi, you said something about mourning, which was quite heavy, a word to use. But for you, your mourning was like, you're mourning the milestones that your children would have missed as an autistic child because of their challenges. You know, you've also said that it can be a lonely experience for mothers.
Yes.
For instance, children don't get invited to parties because of their lack of social disconnection. You know, so do you now advise parents, mothers like you, do you find solace in their companionship because they share the same burden as you, and maybe you can share notes with each other and learn from each other?
Absolutely. So even touching on the first thing you mentioned, where I spoke to you about mourning. It's when you're speaking to parents of neurotypical children and you mention the term mourning my child, you know, they automatically think, oh, did your child pass away? But when I speak about mourning as a parent of a special needs child, what you are in essence mourning are all the hopes and dreams you had for your child. You are mourning this, you know, from the minute we discover we're pregnant, we already think, oh, what is our child going to look like? Oh, I can't wait to do mommy and me dates with my daughter. My son is going to be... When you are hit with that diagnosis, you are mourning because there's
milestones.
Yes, there's a death of the child you thought you were going to have, and honestly, even the life you thought you were going to have as an individual, as a parent, and now you have to embrace this whole new life. So with that said, having other parents who are going through the same thing, it's not only beneficial, in my opinion, it is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely.
Because there are ways, even when Chinwe and I met today and we started speaking
I think there was going to be a connection.
There's just an instant connection because, you know, she understands what I'm saying, when I reference things about my daughter, she's not thinking, oh my goodness, how do you even deal with that? It's just, yep, I know what you're talking about.
Because you have to have worn those shoes.
Exactly. And
I want
also,
you both to sort of like delve into your stories a little bit for those who don't know. So at what stage did you discover your child had autism?
So with my son, my firstborn, Isaiah, is 12 years old. So I discovered that it was the speech delay. So I would say by the time I knew for certain, he was about 2.5.
Wow, it took that long for you to actually find a sex.
So it took that long, but if I'm being honest, you know, there are stages to this autism thing.
What are the stages? Because a lot of people seem to be in denial.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly. So the first stage, you're looking at just concern. something is off here. And sometimes that concern comes later if it's your first child. And my child was not only my first child, it was the first grandchild in my extended family. So I really had nothing to compare it to. So first there's concern, like something may be off. I remember actually picking my son up from daycare, and there was a way his peers were interacting with their parents, the immediate eye contact, oh, mommy's here. And I remember thinking, something is off.
His was just a dead expression, nothing.
Yep, I'm like, something is off here. Even when I'd walk in and just, kind of spy on him, he was still engaging in solitary play, whereas his peers had already advanced to parallel play. So there's noticing, okay, something is wrong. Then there is, the next stage, honestly, is crippling fear. Oh, what if there is something wrong? Now what do we do? So then you go through all the processes. You spend probably about 23 hours a day on Google, Googling everything, under the sun, Googling every single symptom, comparing him or her to other children. And then after that, when you finally do see that something is, there's something not typical about your child, then there's denial. Because for me, I was like, no, it's a language delay. No, mind you, I taught special ed. So it's not like I hadn't been around children, but it was still, no, can't be my kid. No, of course not, so.
Did you feel like that too as well, Chinwe?
No, because my son, Sean, he met all his other milestones apart from talking. Like he wasn't talking, but he was doing the normal baby babbling, and my daughter, Ashley, was talked late. So I never noticed anything because he used to play. He was not antisocial. So some of the typical autistic symptoms he did not have. So one day, when I was going to have my last child, Zara, my sister Uche, she came visiting and came to say bye-bye, do her goodbyes. And she said, she wrote me, she's always dramatic. She gave me a letter. And she wrote me, Chinwe, God is on the throne and this. I noticed this about Sean. She wrote in a letter that she came from behind and Sean was watching Barney. And she was calling him and he did not respond.
Wow.
So she dropped something and he turned and looked at her. So she knew that, so I was like, So if he did not respond, he was engrossed. Maybe that was subconscious denial. I was like, if he did not respond, that means he was engrossed in what he was doing. So fast forward, so when I was in America, we went for his normal pediatrician check with Ashley, and the pediatrician was watching him and was like, he's not talking? And I'm like, no, he's not talking. So how do you know when he wants water?
Something.
If I'm like, when he wants water, he there's always water beside him, because I know he wants, at night he knows there's water beside him. It's like, okay, how about the daytime? He knows where the fridge is. He goes to the fridge. Right. How about if he can't reach what it is, then then he comes.
Okay.
But that is the autistic the spectrum side.
Let's hold that now, because we're going on the break in a minute, and then we'll go back to that. We'll definitely revisit the issue. We're going on the break right now. Please don't go anywhere. Just grab a cup of coffee and come and listen to something that will be beneficial to everybody, or at least somebody that you know. See you in just a minute. Chinwe, you were saying.
Okay. So yes, with the pediatrician, so she was like, okay, so what if he can't reach it? And I said, if he can't reach it, then he will take me. So that was one of these flag-offs for a spectrum child.
Why? The fact that he didn't take you to...
The fact that instead of telling me, oh, mommy, get me that in the fridge, he will now take my hand and take me to where he wants. So that was a flag. Then again, she was also disturbed because Sean would only respond to what he wants to respond to. So he would pretend. So she was when she was like, oh, does he have any problem with his hearing? I'm like, no, he hears perfectly.
At what age was this?
We're talking about almost 3. So he had not reached that milestone of
But was he conversing with other kids?
No, he was playing. Yeah, he played.
But he wasn't talking.
But he wasn't talking. So he would play with his with Ashley. When he goes to crash, he would play, but he just wasn't talking. So for me, it was like, I mean, I know kids that have not talked till have not talked till 4 years old. So I was not, like I said, my first daughter did not talk exactly at 2. She started talking after 2. So I wasn't even bothered, and I had read up a lot. So I wasn't.
By the time you were reading up, you didn't Google anything about autism?
No,
or anything
having
like that?
said that, I have a niece who is on the spectrum too.
Okay.
So, but, you know, like I said, he was not displaying any of the typical...
Things that she displayed.
Yeah, so, you know, so, I mean, the only flag off was like he would respond, and that my sister drew my attention to that. He will respond to you if he wants to, if he's interested in that particular thing. So, because they were worried he was not hearing, he had to do like a hearing test, and it came out perfect. You know, he could hear.
So it was just that he had.
He just.
I want to ask also, Kemi, you have 2 autistic children.
Yes.
So one cannot but ask: is it that there's a genetic? Is there any genetic connection to this?
So my personal belief is that there is a genetic component when it comes to autism. But that's like a lot of ailments that we see. I think there's a genetic component, but I think what happens is with a lot of these genetic components, they're environmental triggers. You know, just like some people could say, oh, you know, there's a lot of cancer in my family, and then, but then there's an environmental trigger. You now work with, I don't know, paints or plastic, something that then...
Toxins.
Exactly, that then flips that switch and triggers or activates, I should say, that genetic component. So my personal belief, I do believe there is a genetic component.
What are some of the environmental factors that you believe caused in 1 or 2 of your children?
So again, I will preface by saying I'm not a medical doctor. Nothing I'm saying here is intended as medical advice, but just my personal opinion. I personally believe vaccines triggered my first 2 children.
That vaccine thing, it's a very controversial debate.
Yes, it is. And when I read a very controversial, especially in the United States, because
every mother now cannot now but wonder.
Should my child be vaccinated or not? I do wonder, because I mean, I personally, a nurse in the States told me not
categorically
told me off the records, because the pediatrician was wondering at this fast forward why Zara had not had her MMR, and again she wasn't even due for the MMR, and she was like, oh, there's an outbreak, you know. So I'm like, no, I don't want to give her yet, saying that my son, we're going through this, the same pediatrician, and she was like, no, you should give her this vaccine. You know, I'm like, no, I don't think so. No, you have to give her this vaccine.
Pediatrician said you should.
Yeah, yes, I was having this argument with her, and her nurse was there. So when I stepped out, the nurse, a black American nurse, came up to me and said, don't do it. Don't do it. And so many kids have come.
But now that you said that, you also went on to have another child, both of you, after your autistic
child,
your challenged children. Did you at any time feel scared to get pregnant again? Because you were not sure whether or not...
petrified.
You were petrified?
I was petrified. I mean, even during my pregnancy, I remember there was a point I went to London, and I remember my sisters being like, Kemi, you stink. I was like, what? Because I was not using deodorant with aluminum. I didn't care if it was 90 degrees outside. I said, I don't want anything toxic on my body, so you guys are just going to have to tolerate my stench. I was not microwaving foods. I was only using glass, and this is all during the pregnancy. And then when he came out, I was watching every single thing.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
because you mentioned that
did he blink too many times?
This was your 3rd child?
Yes. I'm like, is that babbling or is that verbal stimming I'm hearing? I mean, I was so...
So at what age did you feel a bit confident that,
honestly,
he wasn't
by the
autistic?
time he hit about 11, 12 months, I was like, oh, okay, you know what? I'm seeing so many things I did not see in my first 2 that I didn't even realize that I missed. And I was like, I would tell my husband, like, oh, wow, so Isaiah and Izzy should have been doing this. Like,
so you were, like, talk about microscopic lens to see whether there was any...
Yes.
Speaking of which, someone like you, Chinwe, now let me ask you this. What are the diets that they can avoid? What kind of things should you have in your house that would create calmness, and things that you should not have that other people would take for granted?
Okay.
In a house where you have an autistic child.
So I try to be balanced, because, you know, I try not to deprive him from a lot of things, but ideally, ideally an autistic child should stay away from sugar because sugar makes them hyper. Sugar makes a normal child hyper.
Most parents even say sugar makes them.
So we limit, we do not give him sugar at all. We try not to. But now after a while, I'm like, oh, man, the poor boy has to leave, you know.
Let him have a piece of candy.
So let him have, but we try to moderate it. I mean, you hear his therapist like, you know, if he has to do some work, and Sean is hyper in the morning, and the staff gossiping, madam, don't go give him sugar. You know, so they know. But I mean, you can't deprive. That's me. I am wrong because you should actually keep them off sugar.
Eliminate it.
So,
but what about the house? Because I know you were saying something like this. You don't have photo frames. You don't have anything. Why? What kind of these are things that people take for granted?
So the reason, well, first before I answer that, I'll say once you've seen one autistic child, that's all you've seen. One autistic child. My daughter personally is very sensory seeking. So she receives a lot of she calms her nervous system by climbing, jumping. She has to feel that force in her joints. So, for example, my daughter will do things like jump from the couch to the top of the fireplace and then jump to the
very
floor.
energetic,
You know what I mean? So after after photo frames have been broken, every single vase has been broken in your house. You know, you learn to let me clear all these things out. My daughter also, she experiences pica sometimes. Pica is when you eat things that are not edible. So, yes, so there was a point I would notice my daughter, I don't know if it was something in the paint, like I'd see her next to the wall, I'm like, what are you doing? And I'd notice there were teeth marks on the wall, or she would chew on her shirt. So little things like that. And because she's sensory seeking, you know, instead of regular couches, I put these heavy duty bean bags. I have a climbing structure in the middle of my living room that really should be outside in a park somewhere. But I'm like, you know what? It has to be in my living room. Glass items, not in my living room.
Do you react to colors though?
My children personally do not. I don't think I've really ever heard of an autistic child reacting to colors, noise, sound, sensory stimulation. So, you know, there's some autistic children who, like how I said, my daughter is sensory seeking, always looking for some sort of input.
That she can feel.
Exactly. Some autistic children are sensory avoiding. So the minute they get home, the first thing they want to do is strip themselves naked because even the feel of the cotton.
It's good that you mentioned that because there was an incident that I heard of where an autistic child discovered her sexuality at the age of 18. I don't know how she discovered that. And she used to play with herself.
Right.
And then there would be times where she would come downstairs and there are guests around and she would just start to play with herself. So it's also something I've always wanted to ask, that when they get to that age, where when they become aware of their sexuality and they start to fancy women or fancy guys, how do you now teach them on how to manage expressing that? Because that's a very dicey, very dicey. And people can take undue advantage of them as well.
Of course.
So how do you now send that message across to them that this is something that is private and should not be displayed openly or should be managed?
And that's where a behavioral therapist will come in.
Yes.
And of course, there are not too many in Nigeria. You do what you can, but a behavioral therapist has gone through this, and you know, at every stage of an autistic child's life, they have appropriate therapists. So that is where the behavioral.
But as a mother, do you see yourself doing sex education?
Well, to some level, yes. If it would arise,
especially if the child is challenged.
Yeah, if it's like you like normal things. So no, don't do that.
Overprotective.
Yes, I am overprotective of my child, and that's why he's not been to boarding. You know.
Oh, do they have boarding schools for?
Well, he will be in normal. I mean, depending on the level of autism, because my child has always been to a mainstream school.
Okay.
So
I hear most parents like to take them. to mainstream schools.
Because you see, a lot of kids on the spectrum imitate what they see. They copy a lot. So if you do not take them to a mainstream school,
they won't know how to interact.
They will not know how to interact. And if you take them to a school just for special needs, and you know, in a lot of schools they bundle everything together. So they start copying. If you see a child rocking, then they too start rocking. You know, so my child.
But are they able to express love? How do you know? Are they able to show that this person is special?
Yes.
And also, how do you sort of let children? How do you sort of educate other children to better accept
Okay, so that is
Their
what is
situation.
lacking. That is what is lacking in Nigeria, like awareness, autism awareness. You know, back then I remember I went for a fair, and I had a friend whose child was on the autistic spectrum, and somebody I thought should know better. So when you see like a 13-year-old child misbehaving, jumping, so common sense should tell you that something is not right. You know, so but I saw this girl who I thought was very exposed and should know better, and she flew into a rage. Oh, I saw you talking to this boy's mother. Tell him he just went on the line and pushed somebody off, and now went across to the mother and said, "You should keep your child in check." And I looked at my friend, you know, tears, you know.
Yeah.
And I have a mutual friend with a lady, and I'm like, come on, she should know better. Is it normal for a 13-year-old to, you know? So Nigerians are just not aware. So, and that is a problem, you know, when a child starts, like, okay, look at the other incident on the plane. I mean, I don't know if the guy was autistic or if he was bipolar when he started screaming. So,
Okay, the guy that was...
Yes, well, he is bipolar. So you saw the reaction on the plane. Oh, put it down, get... I mean, is it not common sense? Is it not common sense that there's something wrong with him?
But I want to touch on how you take care of yourselves as mothers. I mean, I have massive respect for women. I have massive respect for mothers. But mothers with autistic children, I mean, you just said you spent 23 hours on Google.
Yes.
I totally believe that alone.
Yes.
There's so much to be done. There's so much care involved in it. There's so much research. Your mind, your soul, your body, everything is in your children.
Yep.
How do you take out time to care for yourselves, and who have been your biggest helpers in this journey?
Well, they're not looking bad.
They're looking amazing.
Looking amazing.
Massive respect. Superheroes.
So having a child on the spectrum or with any special needs, it is extremely tasking. It's emotionally, it's mentally, it's physically, it's financially. So there are points, like I'll be honest with me, there was a point where I was just a shell of myself. I was so consumed. And it really took my family, especially my mother and sisters. They were like, Kemi, this is not you. You that you're always,
Yeah, you're lucky that you have a family.
Exactly. That
Family.
support system, they were very necessary. They sort of pulled me out and said, this cannot define you.
Okay, we're going on a break now, yet again. And of course,
We'll continue with that when we
you
come
people
back.
are looking hot. It's not the end of the world. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with perspectives. Chinwe, that was a very interesting angle that you gave us there. You said during COVID, because of course during COVID everybody was homebound and they couldn't go anywhere. Sean had fits of rages.
Yeah.
Tell us why.
So during COVID was the most challenging time I ever had with Sean. I'd never seen Sean like that. So before now, like I said, he would go to school in the morning, 7:30.
He had a pattern.
He had
that
a pattern,
followed.
come back home, do his therapy, like swim. You know, he every Saturday, Sunday, and when he's on break, he goes swimming. He plays basketball, and he was learning how to run within a track. So
all that stopped.
all that stopped during COVID. And, you know, I had underlying condition, and so does my husband. So we could not take any chance. So we had to keep him in, stop the therapists from coming. So he had no activity. And
Serious meltdown.
he had serious meltdown. He broke like over 7 flat screen TVs, pulled down the chandeliers, tipped, you know. It was just a nightmare. Just broke.
And he's big. Sean is a big boy.
And he's a big boy. Yes, you know him. He pulled everything down. Just, you know.
So how did you now control? How did you manage
there's
this?
nothing. We had to talk him through it, you know, and wait.
But could he grasp what you were trying to tell him?
He could not understand. Yeah, he knew. We were telling Sean there's a pandemic. You can't go out. You know, you can't keep your nose mask on. You know. And he could not keep his nose mask on. So even when the lockdown was over, we could not still send him to school because we know that after the lockdown, people were still catching and dying from COVID. So after like it was a nightmare, you know, after like breaking furniture,
And this is a whole year.
This was like over 9 months of staying.
How were you able to take out time for yourself?
There was just
It's
no
not
way.
time
It
for
was
yourself
no
at this
time
point in
because
time.
I had to be indoors.
surviving.
Yes, I had to be indoors.
anywhere anyway.
I
She
could
was
not go
housebound.
anywhere because I was housebound because
Outside maybe? Fresh air?
Well, we used to take him around to walk in the
Okay, so he would walk
walk
around
around
the
the
estate.
estate, but even
has to
at
be
that,
some sort
after a
of
while, that
relief
was not
Enough.
for him. I know he had been out of should I say out of his pattern for a long time. So he started doing inappropriate things like, you know, if someone, normally he could tolerate environmental noises, but after being indoors for such a long time, so the noises he had gone over, like, you know, if a car is going by, you know, screech, he will tap the car. So you can imagine, if somebody is like walking, he could just tap. If you're doing something he doesn't like. So it was really, that was the most challenging period. It wasn't even so much as all the destruction and, I mean, all those things could be replaced. Exactly. So now we're trying to get him back, slowly getting him back, you know. So that's how come he stopped going to school, because after being out of school for almost a year, he was no longer used to sitting down, because Sean would go to school normally, sit down, go for his classes with his facilitator and do work, you know, play. So he was, I'm lucky in the sense that he could interact a lot, you know. So he had friends, and because he runs very fast, so his friends love chasing him. So he got invited to.
So at least he has a social.
He had a social. Yeah, when he was in school, he had a social life.
But what about you, Kemi? In your case, during COVID, how did your daughter cope?
Oh, it was very hard for my daughter because, like I said, she's also sensory seeking. So just having to stay indoors was extremely difficult for her. And then we started this this Zoom schooling thing.
But she didn't comprehend
which was, and I had to fight the school. I said, this is a nightmare. This is not working. And that's the thing, when you're dealing with special needs children, you as a parent also, you have special needs that people have to accommodate. So I spoke to the school. I said, me sitting here, forcing her to sit and watch a Zoom is not beneficial. It is more beneficial for me to take her for a walk and say, oh, let's look at the leaves. Can you count how many trees you see on this road? You know, talk to mama about, let's count the houses. Is that a house? Is that a dog? These are things that are more beneficial. So really, when it came to COVID, I created my own bubble for my kids.
But as she's non-verbal, though, how does she communicate? That she understands? Are you the only one that can understand her?
For the most part, when she uses her single words, you can understand her. So she may say, you know, cup or water or mama. So anybody can understand that. But in terms of her actually wanting to get something or try to use a sentence, it's very difficult for anyone to understand her. She's also very independent though. And I think a huge part of that comes from her lack of communication. So she's used to, okay, I want this, you know what, I'm just gonna have to climb the counter and reach and grab it, or she'll take my hands, or she'll say, get up, you know, for me to come with her and help her get whatever it is that she wants.
Most parents also too, every parent prays that their children will outlive them. Yeah. By God's grace, that's everybody's parents.
Yeah.
But I know that parents of challenged children worry about the future of their children after their demise. Yes. So, you know, is this something that you guys worry about?
And that's one thing where when we spoke, I said it is so beneficial, it is necessary to be in this struggle of special needs parenting with other parents that understand you. Because I remember there was time I was speaking to one of my girlfriends who has an autistic son, and I was just having a total meltdown at Dunkin' Donuts. And, you know, we're talking about, you know, the changes, the challenges, and what you were saying, how I referenced, you know, we all pray that our children outlive us. And then I said to her, not that that's not my prayer, but I don't know how to confidently and comfortably actually make that prayer, because one of my biggest fears is my children will be walking this earth and I'm not here. You know, like, what does that mean?
And you understand them better than anybody else.
Exactly. And, you know, the lady I was speaking to, my friend, I was like, you know, I know that sounds horrible. She was like, no, it doesn't. She was like, I think about that every day. She told me, she was like...
Is that something you also worry about too?
No, I haven't actually thought of it, but I should. But I mean, they have like siblings. I have like they have cousins. Yes, we have a large family. So,
but you're even lucky you also have siblings.
Yeah, I do.
Because there's nothing more worrisome than for a lot of people who maybe are single mothers. They live alone. They don't really have close family ties. That must be one of the most morbid fears that they will have. Who's going to take care of this child? But as well, do you not also, as a parent, try to make that child as independent of you as possible?
And that is the point.
Because there'll be times when you travel.
Exactly, like me being here. That is the point of all these therapies, and that is really for me the driving force behind my NGO, Isabel's Voice, because there is a level of independence, and every child is different, especially every child. I mean, every child is different, period. But there is, it is imperative that all children, especially those with special needs, that you can get them to their own individual maximum level of independence.
Yeah, like cooking.
Because at least with then they have, like you said, supports. You know, they have big, and that it's not burdensome. It's not as burdensome.
And you see that gradually happening with the children.
To wrap up the show, what do you think Nigeria should do more for autistic children? Do you think that Nigeria is paying enough attention?
No,
or doing
definitely
enough?
not.
So what would you, if you had your way and you were speaking to the president of Nigeria right now, pretend I'm the president-elect.
I think there should be more awareness, definitely. I think we need to remove the social stigma that's held behind autism. Your child does not have autism because you had your child out of wedlock. Your child does not have autism.
Even that shouldn't be discriminated.
Exactly. Your child does not have autism.
So you actually hear things like that?
The things your child is not. The devil is not dancing on your child's tongue. It is not witchcraft. This is a neurodevelopmental disorder that needs medical attention. It needs education attention, and that's the other big part: inclusion. I mean, we talked here about how you said Sean thrived when in mainstream education. All the research says that in order for any child to be successful, they need, or to be as successful as they can, they need to be placed in the least restrictive environment, which means inclusive education. So the biggest thing, we need to fund these programs. We need to train teachers.
I would say, like she said, more awareness and more facilities. There's absolutely no facilities. I have not seen one occupational therapy that is anywhere close. You see some people say they're occupational therapists. You go there, it's just one room, a few balls. No. That is
so a lot more investment.
Yes, a lot, especially in occupational therapy, because we all are clear. All kids on the spectrum have sensory issues. So more teachers, more therapists, you know, and
diagnostic centers.
Thank you so much, Chinwe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on Perspective.
We've really dug deep into this conversation, and I hope that any mother out there listening or parent out there listening will know that it's not a hopeless cause. And
it is not.
Absolutely.
These are beautiful kids. It is not.
Okay, now, for concerning parents of carers of autistic children, on the days you feel exhausted and can't go any further, look back and see how far you have come. On the days you feel you can't handle yet another battle, look at all your scars and be proud of the ones that you have won. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists they become the best they can possibly be. That's all we have time for today. And always remember, life is a learning curve. You've been watching Perspectives here on Rise News with me, Ruth Osime.
And I am Olatorera Oniru, sending all my love to every mother, parent, and caretaker of autistic children. Also sending hugs, peace, good health, and a comfortable, brighter future to every autistic child. I am full of hope that the world would find effective cures and eliminate mental defects in our children, alive and unborn. The key to a better world today is humanity. Our world needs a much stronger dosage of healthy love, care, and compassion. Thank you for watching Perspectives. Thank you to our special guests for joining us today. Have a great weekend and see you all very soon. Goodbye.